Back in high school, a group of friends and I used to go down to a secluded part of the Sandy River in Oregon we called the Pipeline. It was called this because there was a large utility pipe about 10 feet wide that ran above the river in that spot. The area was only accessible by parking and walking about a half mile, and then descending a steep bank to get to a small beach-like area we used for swimming. It was also private property, but the landowner's actual house was far away, and it was nearly impossible for them to monitor this secluded area. We never saw them, so we never really worried, but we knew they were there and could catch us at any time. One summer evening, 7 or 8 of us trekked down there. We had gone about an hour before sunset and been there for about 90 minutes, so it had gotten dark. There were no lights or houses anywhere nearby, which meant it was almost pitch black. We loved it. When you grow up in the country, the darkness of nature is calming. Usually. In the middle of our casual river shenanigans, someone suddenly cursed and pointed up the hill on the other side of the river. We all looked and saw some bobbing lights that seemed to be floating downward towards the water, which was confusing because that side of the river is very steep and it would be nearly impossible to navigate smoothly down to the water, especially holding some sort of light. But despite the weirdness, we assumed this was the owner of the land, finally coming to reprimand us for swimming on his property. It was time to quickly pack up and go home before they found us, which meant fumbling around in the dark for our clothes and possessions. We scooped up our stuff and started up the steep embankment on our side of the river and onto the 1/2 mile path to get back to our cars. We didn't hear any voices or scrambling behind us. It seemed as though we had escaped the wrath of whoever's light we saw. About halfway down the trail, my friend Drew realized that he had left his glasses down by the river and another girl had forgotten her sandals. We wanted to go back to get them, and Drew basically couldn't see in the daylight without his specs, so leaving them behind was not an option. A few people went ahead to the cars, not wanting to encounter the people with the lights, while myself, another friend, Kara, Drew, and the sandals girl reluctantly turned around to go back to the riverbank. 20 minutes later, we had gotten the stuff without seeing any weird lights or encountering any people, which was a relief, and had reclimbed the bank back onto the trail, again heading back toward the parking lot a half mile away. It seemed darker now, even darker than the pitch black before. After walking about 100 feet down the trail, a sudden and visceral feeling came over all 4 of us. You could tell something had shifted because before, we had all been sort of joking around, being all teenagery and stuff. But at the same moment, everyone had gone silent and started to walk faster. Not run, just walk with a purpose. Kara was the first to say something, and it was chilling, because we all confirmed exactly what she was feeling as soon as she said it. There's something following us. She was right. All 4 of us had the distinct feeling that we were being watched or followed down this dark wooded path, and we were still quite far from the area where our cars were. We walked briskly and in silence for a few minutes, our loud and heavy breath piercing the still, cool forest around us. And then, I, Kara, and the sandals girl noticed that Drew was not with the group anymore. He had fallen back about 50 or 60 feet and was walking noticeably slower. We stopped and turned around, complaining, "Drew, hurry up! It's scary and dark. Come on!" He didn't say anything, so we started walking back toward him to see what was up. But he said, "No, don't turn around. Just keep going. I'm fine." We tried to figure out what his deal was, but he insisted that we should just walk ahead and that he'd be right behind us. We reluctantly obliged and kept going. At this point, we were totally freaked out and were hurrying to get back to civilization. Finally, after another 15 minutes, the lights on the main road came into view, and soon we were piling into Kara's car, eager to leave the river behind us for the night. Drew didn't say another word until we had driven at least 5 miles up the road toward the heart of town. As streetlights and houses began to appear with more frequency, and the dark woods faded behind us, we asked him what had happened, and I'll never forget what he told us. He said that a few moments after feeling we were being followed, he had heard a voice behind us that said something to the effect of,
I see you.
Or,
I can see you.
And when he turned around to look for the source of the voice, he had seen not a being or animal, but a large, dark presence of some sort slowly making its way along the path behind us. He had been overcome with the feeling that if he stayed behind us a few feet, the dark thing wouldn't catch up, and we would be safe, as if he was sort of keeping it at bay while we walked ahead. He said it talked to him the whole way up the path in a whispered voice, taunting him to walk faster. He was visibly shaken and wanted nothing more than to go home. It was a very disturbing ordeal for him. We never went back to that swimming hole at night again. Whether this was something real or something all in our heads, I'll never know. But I'll never forget the look on Drew's face once we got back to the car. Genuine fear. Scariest night I can remember. Every summer it's the same thing. All my friends want to go to the beach, and I do whatever I can to get out of going. I make up some excuse or play it off as some joke, and hope the topic doesn't get brought up again. I don't tell people the real reason I don't go to the beach, or why I don't like spending too long in the shower, or being around water in general. I'm writing this because I hope getting it off my chest will help me get over this thing. It all started when I was 8. My family had taken a trip to the beach. I remember being so excited to go. I remember running to the water's edge as soon as we climbed over the small hill between the parking lot and the sand. I remember my dad yelling at me to stop as he came running over and grabbed me. I had to wait till we set up the cooler and chairs and all that, he said. Finally, after my mom had rubbed suntan lotion on me and my sister, I was finally allowed to go into the water. I ran as fast as my legs could into the water. I remember how hot the day was, par for the course for a late July day, and I remember how nice the cold ocean water felt. I splashed around for about an hour or so, keeping close to shore like I was told. At least at first. But like most kids do, I slowly began to back out into deeper water, becoming confident in my ability to swim safely back to shore. I remember I got out to where I couldn't feel my feet on the sand anymore. Then I heard it. Someone was calling my name. I stopped and looked around, but no one seemed to be trying to get my attention, so I ignored it and went back to swimming. After a few moments, I heard the voice call out again. This time, while I was underwater, I grabbed a fresh breath and quickly dove back down. I heard it again, calling out to me from the deeper water. I don't know why I did it, but I followed the voice. Suddenly, something grabbed my foot and pulled me down. I struggled as much as I could, but I could feel my lungs begin to burn from lack of air. Just as I was about to give up, whatever it was let go of my leg, and I rose to the surface. I quickly came up and took a deep breath. I began to swim back to shore, but stopped. I couldn't see the shore. I looked all around me, and I couldn't see anything but open water. Not only that, but something else was wrong. I couldn't see the sun. It was a beautiful sunny day before, not a cloud in the sky. But now, only light gray sky. I looked around, and the water was perfectly black. I didn't move. I just kept looking around me, hoping that I would see sand, but none. Then, just as I was beginning to cry, I felt the hand grab my leg and pull me back down. The next thing I remember, a lifeguard was standing over me. Apparently I had gone out too far, and the undertow had taken me under. For the rest of the day, I didn't go anywhere near the water, and was glad when we finally left. I never told anyone what really happened to me. I didn't think anyone would believe an 8-year-old's story. But I know it's true. I know it's true because every time I go swimming in a pool, sit in a hot tub, or stay in the shower too long, I hear it calling me back. I have been an avid swimmer and diver ever since I was in my late teens. As I got into various jobs out of high school, I never lost my enthusiasm for diving. So when I had an opportunity to apply for a law enforcement-related diving job, I jumped for it. Not a lot of people are interested in a job that involves feeling around at the bottom of muddy lakes and streams for dead bodies, but I figured if it involved diving, I may as well put my hobby to good use. In the diving academy, where I had to go no matter how much experience I had, they taught us techniques for how to find things you're searching for underwater. It's not always bodies, you understand. Sometimes it's guns or stolen property, or cars. They taught us about currents and eddies, and all those things that can affect where something will end up underwater. One of the trainees asked a question one day while we were prepping to get into our diving pool. He asked the instructor if it wasn't creepy under the water, with zero visibility, touching everything to see if it's a dead corpse. The instructor seemed a little amused, and yet he had a strange look on his face. "You don't know the half of it," he said. "We're dealing with people's fathers and brothers and sons down there, and we are always respectful and do our jobs with professionalism. When you're out there on the job, no matter what happens, you just be that, respectful and professional." The way he said it was odd, like there was something he wanted to get across to us, but wasn't going to come right out and say it. What could I do? I shrugged and let myself fall backwards into the pool. Later in the year, I was on the job. It was all routine for days. Then we got a call for a missing person, and we were to search the bottom of a large pond. 3 of us were going into the water with support personnel above. The officer assigned to give me my on-the-job training checked my equipment and guidelines. He knew this was my first body search, and though I tried to look confident and like I wasn't nervous, he must have known my true feelings. He took me a few steps off to the side. "Look," he told me, "there are things they don't teach you in school. If there's a girl down there, we'll find her. Don't worry about the mud and lack of visibility. Just stick close to me and learn, my friend." He slapped me on the shoulder and we were into the water. I was used to zero visibility. We had dived in our indoor pool with no lights on many times. Guidelines to the boats helped keep us oriented as to direction, and I kept one hand on my training officer's tank harness. I noticed after a while that he did not seem to be hugging the bottom, feeling out for arms and legs. Though I couldn't see, I had the distinct impression he was intentionally swimming a couple of feet above the bottom, and I couldn't detect movement showing he was feeling around. I tried to feel around though. My left hand and arm were constantly sweeping while I hung on tight with my right. I could tell he was running a good grid pattern, not missing any territory, covering an area thoroughly before moving to the next. What I didn't understand, unless I was just wrong, was why he would go back over the same area again several minutes later. Wasn't that a waste of time? And then I felt something. Was it a fish? The back of my hand hit something as I was waving it about. I reached back again, and then it happened. Something latched onto my left wrist with all its might. At first I thought it was the third diver playing a joke on me. Then, to my horror, I realized it was not. This was a hand, but it was cold and hard and held me in a death grip. I panicked. I admit it. I let go of my training officer and flipped over on my back and started thrashing with my free arm and both legs. I lost my breathing apparatus. All I wanted to do is rid myself of this thing hanging on to me. And it did let go. Before I could break free to the top and get some air and scream, my training officer quickly found and shoved my regulator into my mouth, and he wouldn't let me go until I quit thrashing and trying to get topside. When I calmed down, he made me grab onto his harness again. Then he circled around until he found what had grabbed onto me. The dead woman's corpse, which wasn't on the bottom, but was floating a few feet above. Then we did our standard work, securing the body and getting her to the boat. On shore, this is what he told me. That woman did not grab your wrist. We swam around, stirred things up, got her body to float up off the bottom so we could find her easier. Your wrist happened to hit her hand just right and you snagged her. That's all. And then he told me the thing that no one talks about. He said, and the next time the same thing happens, you remember what I told you. And I have. 4 times now.